Some people spend their whole lives trying to be seen. Gabriella Romano had learned to survive by being invisible. Until the moment 4 men walked into Stella's Trattoria with murder in their eyes, and she became the only thing standing between a Sicilian mafia boss and his grave. Welcome back to Mafia Folklore. Before this story begins, tell me something. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? It helps us know how far the legend of the Mafia travels tonight. Now, let's begin. The lunch rush at Stella's Trattoria moved like a symphony Gabriella had memorized years ago. She balanced 3 plates along her left arm: veal parmigiana, linguine alla vongole, and a margherita pizza that still steamed from the brick oven. Her right hand carried a basket of bread and a small dish of olive oil infused with rosemary. The scent of garlic and basil hung thick in the air, mixing with the chatter of tourists and the occasional burst of Italian from the kitchen. No one looked at her. Not really. She was part of the scenery. Efficient, polite, forgettable. The kind of woman people's eyes slid past on their way to something more interesting. And that was fine. Gabriella had learned that invisibility had its advantages in a city that chewed people up and spat them out before they even knew what hit them. She delivered the plates to table 7, a family of 4 from somewhere in the Midwest, judging by their accents and the way they pronounced bruschetta. They didn't say thank you. They never did. Gabriella smiled anyway. The rent was due in 6 days, and she was still $200 short. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of the Trattoria, catching dust motes in its golden beams. Outside, Mulberry Street buzzed with life. Vendors hawking leather bags, couples taking selfies in front of painted murals, delivery trucks double-parked and blocking traffic. Little Italy had become more tourist trap than authentic neighborhood, but Stella's held on to its roots. The owner, an old Sicilian named Carmine, refused to change the menu or update the decor. The walls were still covered in faded photographs of Naples and Palermo, and the espresso machine behind the bar was older than Gabriella. She loved this place, even if it was slowly killing her. 2 double shifts this week, 3 last week. Her feet ached in a way that never quite faded anymore, and the dark circles under her eyes had become permanent fixtures. But she showed up. She always showed up. Because what else was there? Gabriella moved toward the kitchen to grab another order when her gaze swept across the dining room, a habit born from years of anticipating needs before customers voiced them. That's when she noticed him. Corner booth. Always the corner booth. Leonardo Russo. She didn't know his name then. Not yet. But she knew what he was. Everyone who worked at Stella's knew. You didn't survive long in Little Italy without learning to recognize the men who owned the streets, even if they never raised their voices or made a scene. He came in twice a week, always alone, always ordered the same thing: rigatoni, alla norma, and a double espresso. He sat with his back to the wall, dark eyes scanning the room with the kind of awareness that made her skin prickle. His presence changed the air, made it heavier, more charged. Tattoos crawled up both forearms, disappearing beneath the rolled sleeves of his crisp white shirt. Intricate designs she couldn't quite make out from this distance, but she'd caught glimpses before. Dark ink against olive skin. Beautiful and dangerous, like everything about him. His deep brown eyes never stayed still. They moved constantly, tracking movement, cataloging faces, calculating exits. Even when he lifted his espresso cup to his lips, his attention never wavered. Gabriella had served him exactly 3 times in the 2 years she'd worked here. Each time, he'd been polite, almost gentle in the way he thanked her. His voice was low, textured with an accent that marked him as Sicilian rather than Italian-American. Each time, she'd felt the weight of those brown eyes on her for just a moment longer than necessary. But she'd learned not to think about men like Leonardo Russo, men who wore expensive watches and carried themselves like they owned the world. Men whose hands were probably stained with things she didn't want to imagine. She grabbed the cappuccinos for table 12 and delivered them with practiced efficiency. The couple didn't acknowledge her. She'd stopped expecting it. The trattoria hummed with the usual midday energy. Silverware clinking against plates, conversations overlapping in English and Italian, the hiss of the espresso machine, the occasional bark of laughter from the kitchen. Normal, safe, predictable. Gabriella wiped down table 5 and reset it for the next customers. Her shoulders ached. 6 more hours until her shift ended. Then home to her shoebox studio in Chinatown, where the radiator clanked all night and the neighbors fought in Cantonese through paper-thin walls. She was refilling water glasses when the bell above the door chimed. 4 men entered, and everything changed. The air shifted first, like the pressure drop before a storm. Conversations didn't stop, but they faltered. Forks paused halfway to mouths. The 4 men weren't dressed unusually, dark coats, neutral expressions, but something about the way they moved made Gabriella's instincts scream. They didn't look at the hostess stand. Didn't wait to be seated. Their eyes locked onto the corner booth, onto Leonardo Russo. Gabriella's hands stilled on the water pitcher. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. Leonardo's expression didn't change, but she saw his spine straighten. Saw his fingers spread flat against the white tablecloth. Saw the man seated 2 booths away, broad-shouldered, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, shift his weight and reach toward his jacket, his bodyguard. Time stretched thin. The 4 men kept walking, steady, purposeful. Their hands disappeared into their coats. Gabriella's breath caught. This was going to happen. Right here, right now. In the middle of the lunch rush at Stella's Trattoria, surrounded by tourists eating overpriced pasta and taking photos of their tiramisu, someone was about to die, and for one crystalline moment, Gabriella Romano, invisible, exhausted, $200 short on rent, stood frozen at table 9 with a water pitcher in her hand and wondered if today was the day her luck finally ran out. Have you ever witnessed something that made you choose between running away or standing your ground? What did you do? Tell us in the comments. The first shot shattered the espresso machine. Glass exploded across the bar in a glittering spray, and the screaming started immediately. Chairs scraped against tile as customers scrambled toward the exit, knocking over tables, trampling through spilled wine and broken plates. The tourist family from table 7 abandoned their half-eaten meals and bolted for the door, the father clutching his youngest child against his chest. Gabriella dropped the water pitcher. It hit the floor and burst, sending a wave of cold water across her shoes, but she barely felt it. Her body had frozen, every muscle locked as her brain struggled to process what was happening. The 4 men had pulled guns from beneath their coats, black, brutal-looking things that seemed too large, too real. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't something happening to someone else. This was Stella's Trattoria at 2:15 on a Thursday afternoon, and 4 men had come to kill Leonardo Russo. "Everybody out!" one of them shouted, his voice thick with a Brooklyn accent. "Now!" The dining room descended into chaos. People shoved past each other, sobbing, shouting, clutching purses and phones. The hostess, a college student named Maria, who couldn't be older than 20, pressed herself against the wall near the entrance. her face bone-white with terror. Carmine emerged from the kitchen, took one look at the scene, and retreated immediately. Smart man. But Gabriella couldn't move. Her feet were rooted to the floor near table 9. Water still spreading around her shoes, her eyes locked on the corner booth where Leonardo sat perfectly still. His bodyguard, the scarred man, had risen from his seat, his hand inside his jacket, but he wasn't fast enough. The second shot caught him in the shoulder. He spun with the impact and crashed into the table behind him, sending plates and silverware flying. Blood bloomed across his shirt, dark and spreading fast. He tried to reach for his weapon, but another shot, this one to the chest, dropped him completely. Gabriella's stomach lurched. The bodyguard lay motionless on the floor, eyes open and staring at nothing, a pool of crimson expanding beneath him. Dead. The man was dead. "Leonardo Russo!" the lead gunman said, his weapon trained on the corner booth. He was tall, with a shaved head and a tattoo of a serpent coiling up his neck. "You made a big mistake touching our shipment." Leonardo didn't flinch, didn't raise his hands, didn't beg. He simply looked at them with those deep brown eyes, calm, calculating, utterly unafraid. "You're making a bigger one," he said quietly. His voice was steady, almost conversational. "Coming here, in broad daylight, with witnesses." "What witnesses?" The gunman smiled, cold and vicious. "Everyone's gone." And he was right. The dining room had emptied. The last few customers had fled into the street, leaving behind a battlefield of overturned chairs, abandoned meals, and broken glass. Even the kitchen had gone silent. Carmine and the cooks had probably escaped through the back alley. Everyone was gone. Except Gabriella. She stood frozen near table 9, 15 feet from the corner booth, her apron still damp with spilled water. Her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Why couldn't she move? Why wasn't she running? The 4 men closed in on Leonardo like wolves circling prey. He remained seated, his hands visible on the table, his expression unreadable. But Gabriella saw something in his eyes, a flicker of calculation, a predator deciding when to strike. He was waiting for an opening, a mistake, a split second of inattention. But there wouldn't be one. 4 guns, 4 men, and Leonardo was alone. "Any last words?" the lead gunman asked, pressing the barrel of his weapon against Leonardo's temple. The metal kissed his skin, and still, Leonardo didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said softly. "You should have sent more men." The gunman laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Tough guy till the end. I respect that. But respect don't stop bullets." His finger moved toward the trigger, and Gabriella's body finally listened to her brain. She lunged, not away, not toward safety, toward the bar. Her hand closed around the neck of a wine bottle, a heavy Chianti with a thick glass base, and she swung it with every ounce of strength she possessed. The bottle connected with the back of the nearest gunman's skull with a sickening crack. He staggered forward, his weapon discharging into the floor, and the entire dynamic of the room shifted in a heartbeat. Leonardo moved like lightning. He surged from the booth, grabbed the lead gunman's wrist, and twisted. Bones snapped. The gun clattered to the floor. Leonardo drove his elbow into the man's throat, and he went down choking. The 3rd gunman spun toward Gabriella, his weapon rising, his eyes wide with shock that she was even there. She'd been invisible to them, just like she was invisible to everyone, but not anymore. Leonardo was already moving. He closed the distance in 2 strides, caught the gunman's arm, and redirected the weapon just as it fired. The shot went wide, punching a hole in the ceiling and raining plaster down on the overturned tables. Leonardo drove his knee into the man's ribs, grabbed his head, and slammed it into the edge of the bar. The gunman crumpled. 3 down. The fourth, the one Gabriella had hit with the bottle, was back on his feet, blood streaming from a gash on his scalp, his gun aimed directly at her. Time slowed. Gabriella saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the cold fury in his eyes, saw death coming for her in the form of a man whose face she would never forget. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare. And then Leonardo was there. He stepped between them, solid, unyielding, impossibly fast, and the shot that should have killed Gabriella tore through his shoulder instead. Leonardo grunted, twisted, and delivered a brutal punch that dropped the fourth gunman instantly. The man hit the floor and didn't get up. Silence crashed over the trattoria. 4 men lay motionless on the tile. Unconscious or worse, Gabriella couldn't tell. The air smelled of gunpowder and blood. Her ears rang from the shots. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold onto the broken neck of the wine bottle still clutched in her grip. Leonardo turned to face her. His shoulder was bleeding, dark blood soaking through his white shirt, but he didn't seem to notice. His deep brown eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that stole whatever breath she had left. "You didn't run," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. Almost wonder. Gabriella's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor amid the broken glass and spilled wine, her entire body trembling, adrenaline crashing through her system like a tidal wave. The wine bottle slipped from her fingers and rolled away. She'd just hit a man with a bottle. She'd just watched people die. She'd just saved Leonardo Russo's life. What had she done? Leonardo crossed to her in 3 strides and crouched down, ignoring the blood dripping from his shoulder. Up close, she could see the details of his tattoos. Intricate patterns of thorns and roses, words in Italian she couldn't read, a small cross over his heart. "Look at me," he said softly. She did. Those eyes, so dark they were almost black in the dim light, held her captive. "What's your name?" "Gabriella," she whispered. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. "Gabriella Romano." "Gabriella." He repeated it like a prayer, like something sacred. "You saved my life." She shook her head, unable to form words. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Leonardo's expression shifted, calculation replacing concern. "The police will be here in less than 2 minutes. When they ask what happened, you tell them you hid in the kitchen. You didn't see anything. Understand?" "But You didn't see anything," he repeated, his voice firm but not unkind. "Trust me, Gabriella. You don't want to be part of this story." But she already was. The moment she'd grabbed that wine bottle, the moment she'd chosen to fight instead of flee, she'd written herself into something far bigger and more dangerous than she could possibly understand. Leonardo stood, wincing slightly as his wounded shoulder protested the movement. He pulled a white handkerchief from his pocket, monogrammed with his initials in dark thread, and pressed it against the bullet wound. "I won't forget this," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't forget people who stand when everyone else runs." The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the wreckage of the trattoria in harsh, pulsing colors. Leonardo Russo walked toward the back exit, moving through the chaos like a ghost, and disappeared into the kitchen. Gabriella sat on the floor surrounded by broken glass, and tried to remember how to breathe. She'd been invisible her whole life, but Leonardo Russo had seen her, and somehow she knew that was going to change everything. When faced with danger, have you ever surprised yourself by acting instead of freezing? What gave you that courage? Tell us in the comments. Gabriella didn't sleep for 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. The gunman's finger on the trigger. The flash of gunfire, blood spreading across white tile. She heard the screaming, smelled the gunpowder, felt the weight of the wine bottle in her trembling hands. The police had questioned her for 2 hours. She'd told them exactly what Leonardo had instructed. She'd hidden in the kitchen, heard shots, didn't see anything. They hadn't believed her, she could see it in their eyes. But without evidence to contradict her story, they'd eventually let her go. The news called it a gang-related incident. 4 men arrested, 1 dead bodyguard, and Leonardo Russo mysteriously absent from every official report. The Trattoria was closed indefinitely while the owners dealt with the damage and the investigation. Which meant Gabriella was out of work. Which meant the rent she'd been $200 short on was now completely out of reach. She should have been worried about eviction, about finding another job in a city that already had too many waitresses and not enough tables to serve. About the fact that her savings account had exactly $73 in it. Instead, she kept thinking about deep brown eyes and a voice that said her name like a prayer. You saved my life. She'd been invisible her whole life, and in one moment of reckless courage, she'd made herself unforgettable to the most dangerous man in Little Italy. Gabriella pulled her jacket tighter against the October wind and walked faster down Canal Street. It was her 4th day looking for work. 3 diners, 2 cafes, and a bakery had all told her they weren't hiring. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, and the sky threatened rain. She turned the corner onto Mott Street and nearly collided with a man in a dark suit. Miss Romano, he said, stepping back politely. He was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his black hair and a face that had seen things she didn't want to imagine. Mr. Russo would like a word. Gabriella's heart stopped. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. He gestured toward a black sedan idling at the curb. It will only take a moment. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the afternoon crowds and never look back. But her feet carried her toward the car instead. The back door opened, and there he was. Leonardo Russo sat in the leather seat like a king on a throne, his wounded shoulder bandaged beneath a fresh black shirt, his deep brown eyes tracking her every movement. The interior smelled of expensive cologne and something darker. Danger, maybe. Power. Gabriella, he said softly. Get in, please. She should have walked away, should have told him she wanted nothing to do with his world, his violence, his blood-stained money. Instead, she slid into the seat beside him. The door closed. The sedan pulled into traffic, and Gabriella realized she'd just made her second reckless choice in less than a week. How's your shoulder? She asked, because she didn't know what else to say. Leonardo's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. I've had worse. How are you? Unemployed, probably getting evicted next week. Can't sleep, can't stop shaking. She met his eyes. But alive, so I guess I can't complain. The Trattoria will reopen in 2 weeks, he said. Carmine will call you first. You talked to Carmine? I own the building. He said it casually, like it was nothing. Your job is safe, Gabriella, and your rent, No. The word came out sharper than she'd intended. I don't want your money. Leonardo studied her with those impossibly dark eyes, and she felt like he was seeing straight through her. Past the exhaustion and the fear, down to something she didn't even understand herself. Why did you do it? He asked quietly. You could have run, should have run, but you grabbed that bottle and you fought. Why? Gabriella looked down at her hands, still scraped from broken glass, still trembling slightly. I don't know. I saw them. I saw you, and I couldn't. She stopped, searching for words that made sense. I couldn't just watch. Most people can. I'm not most people. No, Leonardo said, and there was something warm in his voice now, something that made her chest tighten. You're not. The sedan glided through Chinatown, past produce vendors and tourists, and women carrying plastic bags full of bok choy. Gabriella's neighborhood, her world, so far from his. I need you to understand something, Leonardo continued. The men who came after me, they belong to the Vitale family, and they don't forget witnesses. He paused, letting that sink in. I can protect you. I don't need protection. Gabriella. I don't need your protection, she corrected, turning to face him fully. I'm not some damsel you get to rescue now. I made my choice that day. It was mine, and I'll live with the consequences on my own terms. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You're angry with me, he observed. I'm not angry. She struggled to articulate the storm of emotions churning inside her. I'm not going to be another thing you own, Leonardo. Another problem you solve with money or muscle. I saved your life because it was the right thing to do. Not because I wanted anything from you. I know. Do you? She held his gaze. Because men like you, you're used to people wanting something, needing something. But I don't. I don't want your protection or your money or your guilt. I just want to go back to my life. What life? The question was soft, but cut deep. Double shifts at a trattoria? A studio apartment you can't afford? Being invisible to everyone who looks at you? Gabriella's jaw tightened. That's my life. It's not much, but it's mine. It could be more. With you? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't even know me. Then let me. The words hung between them, charged with something Gabriella didn't want to name. The sedan pulled to a stop outside her building, a narrow walk-up with faded brick and a door that stuck in humid weather. Leonardo looked at it like he was memorizing every detail. Dinner, he said. Tomorrow night. Just dinner. You pick the place. Leonardo? I'm not asking for forever, Gabriella. Just one meal, one conversation, no obligations. His eyes held hers. You saved my life. The least you can do is let me say thank you properly. She should say no. Should slam the car door and never look back. But there was something in his voice. Not command, not expectation. Just hope. And Gabriella Romano, who'd spent her whole life being invisible, found herself nodding. One dinner, she said firmly. And then you leave me alone. One dinner, Leonardo agreed. She climbed out of the sedan and walked toward her building without looking back. But she felt his eyes on her the whole way, warm and heavy and impossible to ignore. That night, flowers arrived. 24 white roses with a card that read simply, "Thank you for seeing me." Gabriella threw them in the trash. The next morning, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside, 3 months' rent, paid in full, and a note. Not charity. Compensation for the trattoria being closed. You would have earned this anyway. L. She almost tore up the check. Almost. But rent was due in 2 days, and pride didn't pay bills. She deposited it, hating herself a little. That afternoon, Leonardo was waiting outside the bodega when she went to buy groceries. "You're following me now?" she asked, clutching her reusable shopping bag. "I'm making sure you're safe." "I told you. I know what you told me." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, cedar, and smoke. "But the Vitale family doesn't care what you want, Gabriella. They saw you that day, and they will come looking. So, what am I supposed to do? Hide forever? Become another person you control?" "No." His voice was quiet but firm. "You're supposed to let someone stand beside you instead of always standing alone." "I've been alone my whole life," she said, and the words came out more bitter than she'd intended. "I'm good at it." "I know." Leonardo's hand lifted, not to touch her, but hovering in the space between them and offering. "I see you, Gabriella. The way you move through the world like you're apologizing for taking up space. The way you flinch when people raise their voices. The way you count change 3 times because you can't afford to be wrong." Her breath caught. No one had ever. "I see you," he repeated softly. "And I'm asking, not demanding, not buying, for a chance to know the woman who was brave enough to fight when everyone else ran." Gabriella's hands tightened on her shopping bag. "Why?" "Because in my world, people stand for power, for money, for fear." His deep brown eyes held hers. "You stood for something else, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about what that means." A taxi honked somewhere down the street. A woman shouted in Mandarin from an open window. Life continued around them, ordinary and unaware. "One dinner," Gabriella said finally. "Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. There's a small Vietnamese place on Baxter Street. Faux Saigon, nothing fancy. We split the check." Leonardo's smile was small but genuine. 7 o'clock, Baxter Street. "And Leonardo?" She met his eyes. "This doesn't mean I'm yours to protect, or yours to save. If we do this, if we have this dinner, it's because I'm choosing it, not because you decided for me." "Understood." She turned to walk away, then paused. "And stop sending flowers. I don't need grand gestures." "What do you need?" The question stopped her. No one had ever asked her that before. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But when I figure it out, I'll tell you." The next evening, Gabriella stood outside Faux Saigon in her best jeans and a simple black sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in her usual waitress ponytail. Leonardo arrived exactly at 7, wearing dark slacks and a gray Henley that somehow made him look less dangerous and more human. Real. "You came," he said, and there was relief in his voice. "I said I would. In my experience, people often say things they don't mean. I'm not those people." They sat in a corner booth, of course, Gabriella thought with a small smile, and ordered pho and spring rolls and Vietnamese iced coffee. The restaurant was small, cramped, nothing like the places a man like Leonardo Russo probably frequented. But he didn't seem to mind. They talked, really talked. He told her about Sicily, about growing up in Palermo with a father who ran the docks and a mother who made the best arancini in the neighborhood. About coming to New York at 16 with nothing but a suitcase and a name that opened certain doors and closed others. She told him about growing up in Queens with a single mother who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. About community college classes she'd had to drop because textbooks cost more than groceries. about dreams of becoming a teacher that had faded into double shifts and overdue bills. "You still could," Leonardo said quietly. "Become a teacher. I'm 28, too old to start over." "You're never too old." Gabriella stirred her foe, watching the steam rise. "Says the man who's probably never had to worry about money a day in his life." "I've worried about money." His voice was soft. "Just not in the way you mean. I've worried about blood money, dirty money, money that costs more than it's worth." He paused. "But you're right. I've never worried about rent, about choosing between food and medicine. That's a different kind of fear." She looked up, surprised by his honesty. "I don't pretend to understand your world, Gabriella, but I'd like to." He leaned forward slightly. "If you'll let me." "Why?" she asked again, needing to understand. "You could have anyone. Why me?" Leonardo's eyes, those deep brown eyes that had haunted her dreams, held hers with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. "Because everyone else wants Leonardo Russo, the boss, the name, the power." He reached across the table, his tattooed hand stopping just short of hers. "You want nothing from me, which means anything you give, your time, your trust, your smile, it's real. And I haven't had anything real in a very long time." Gabriella's hand moved, just an inch, until her fingertips brushed his. The contact was electric. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Of you, of this, of what happens when your world crashes into mine." "I'm scared too." She almost laughed. "The great Leonardo Russo scared?" "Terrified." He turned his hand over, palm up, an invitation. "I've survived wars, betrayals, bullets. But you?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "You could destroy me with a word, with a look. That's a different kind of danger." Gabriella's hand slid into his fingers closed around hers, warm, calloused, gentle despite their strength. "One dinner?" she said softly. "That was the deal." "It was. But maybe," she took a breath, "maybe one more wouldn't hurt." Leonardo's smile was like sunrise, slow, warm, transformative. "Maybe not." They stayed until the restaurant closed, talking and laughing and discovering the space where their worlds overlapped. And when Leonardo walked her home, keeping a respectful distance, his hands in his pockets, Gabriella realized something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was falling for the most dangerous man she'd ever met. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She was seen, chosen, wanted, not for what she could give him, but for who she was. 3 weeks passed like a dream Gabriella was afraid to wake from. Leonardo kept his word. He didn't overwhelm her, didn't demand more than she was willing to give. But he was there, constant as gravity, patient as the tide. He showed up at Faux Saigon for their second dinner, then their third. He walked her home from her shifts at the Trattoria when it reopened, never touching her without permission, never pressing for more than she offered. He brought her coffee, black, 2 sugars, exactly how she liked it, and remembered every small detail she mentioned in passing. He was courting her, old-fashioned and deliberate, like she was something precious that required care. And slowly, against every instinct of self-preservation she possessed, Gabriella's walls began to crumble. She learned that Leonardo donated anonymously to the Children's Hospital in Palermo, where his younger sister had died of leukemia when he was 12. That he read Dante in the original Italian and could quote entire passages from memory. That his tattoos weren't just decoration, they were a map of his life. The thorns for his father's funeral, the roses for his mother, the cross over his heart for the sister he'd lost. He was more than the reputation, more than the violence. He was a man who'd been shaped by loss and learned to survive in a world that showed no mercy, just like her. They were standing outside her building after their 7th dinner, Thai food this time. From a place in the East Village, when Leonardo finally asked the question she'd been dreading. "Come to my home," he said quietly, "not as a demand, as an invitation. I want you to see where I live, who I am when the rest of the world isn't watching." Gabriella's heart hammered against her ribs. Going to his home meant crossing a line, meant acknowledging that this, whatever this was, had become real. "Okay," she whispered. His brownstone in Brooklyn Heights was nothing like she'd expected. She'd imagined something cold, sterile, intimidating. Instead, she found warmth. Exposed brick walls lined with bookshelves, a kitchen that smelled of espresso and fresh basil. Photographs of Sicily scattered throughout, coastlines and olive groves and narrow cobblestone streets. A record player in the corner with a stack of vinyl that ranged from Sinatra to Coltrane. "This is..." Gabriella turned slowly, taking it all in. "This is beautiful. It's home." Leonardo moved to the kitchen, his movements easy and familiar. "Coffee? Or something stronger?" "Coffee's good." She watched him work, grinding beans, heating water with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. His wounded shoulder had healed, leaving only a faint scar beneath his shirt sleeve. A reminder of the day everything changed. "I need to tell you something," Leonardo said, his back still to her. "And you're not going to like it." Gabriella's stomach tightened. "What?" He turned, 2 espresso cups in his hands, his expression grave. "The Vitale family knows about you, about us." The room tilted slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means they're watching, waiting for an opportunity to use you against me." He set the cups down on the counter, his jaw tight. "I've had men following you for the past 2 weeks, protection you didn't know about. But they can't be everywhere, Gabriella. And the Vitales are patient." "You've been having me followed?" Anger sparked in her chest. "For 2 weeks? And you didn't tell me?" "I was trying to keep you safe." "Without asking, without telling me." She stepped back, her hands shaking. "This is exactly what I said I didn't want. You making decisions for me, controlling things without my knowledge." "I'm not trying to control you." Leonardo's voice rose slightly, frustration bleeding through his usual calm. "I'm trying to keep you alive." "By lying to me?" "By protecting you from a reality you shouldn't have to face." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "You saved my life, Gabriella, and now you're a target because of it. That's on me. That's my fault. And I will do whatever it takes to..." The window exploded. Glass shattered inward in a vicious spray, and Gabriella felt Leonardo's body slam into hers, taking them both to the floor behind the kitchen island. Her head cracked against the tile, stars bursting across her vision. More shots. 3, 4, 5. She lost count. Bullets punched through the walls, shredded the furniture, sent books tumbling from shelves in cascades of paper. Leonardo covered her completely, his body a shield, his arms locked around her head. She felt his heart hammering against her back. Felt his breath hot against her neck. "Stay down," he growled. "Don't move." The shooting stopped as suddenly as it started. Silence crashed over them, broken only by car alarms shrieking outside and the distant sound of screaming. Leonardo lifted his head slightly, his entire body coiled and ready. Are you hurt? Gabriella did a mental inventory. Her head throbbed where she'd hit it. Her hands were scraped from the floor. But nothing serious, nothing bleeding. I'm okay, she managed. Leonardo's phone was already in his hand, speed dialing. Marco, they hit the house. Get everyone here, now. A pause. No, she's with me? He disconnected and looked down at Gabriella, his face inches from hers. In the dim light filtering through the destroyed window, she could see fear in his eyes. Real, genuine fear, not for himself, for her. We need to move, he said quietly. My men will be here in 3 minutes, but we can't stay exposed. He helped her to her feet, his hands steadying her when she swayed. The brownstone was destroyed, walls pocked with bullet holes, glass everywhere, the record player shattered on the floor. The life he'd built, torn apart in seconds, because of her. This is my fault, Gabriella whispered. No. Leonardo's grip on her shoulders tightened. This is the Vitales. This is my world. You're just caught in it. Because I saved you. Because they're cowards who attack the innocent to hurt the strong. Footsteps pounded up the front steps. The door burst open, and 4 men flooded in, all armed, all moving with military precision. The one in front, Marco, she assumed, took one look at the carnage and swore in Italian. Boss, we need to get you both out of here, now. Agreed. Where? Safe house in Staten Island, or we can... No. Leonardo's voice was steel. Take Gabriella to the location we discussed. The one even I don't know. Gabriella's head snapped up. What? No, I'm not. You are. Leonardo turned to face her fully, his hands cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the violence around them. This is the part where I don't ask, Gabriella. This is the part where I do what I have to do to keep you alive. You can't just... I can, and I will. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. The Vitales just declared war, and until I end it, you need to be somewhere they can't find you. Somewhere even I can't compromise if they take me. Terror clawed at her throat. If they take you, they won't. But she heard the lie in his voice. Saw it in his eyes. Leonardo, 3 weeks, he said softly. You've given me 3 weeks of something I thought I'd never have. Something real, something worth protecting. He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. Let me protect it, please. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. We're out of time, Marco said urgently. Boss, go. Leonardo stepped back, his hands falling away from her face. Marco will take you somewhere safe, somewhere comfortable. You'll have everything you need. Except you. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Leonardo's jaw tightened. Except me. Marco's hand closed gently around Gabriella's elbow. Miss Romano, please. She let herself be guided toward the back door, her eyes never leaving Leonardo's face. He stood in the wreckage of his home, surrounded by his men. Blood on his shirt from a cut she hadn't noticed, looking every inch the dangerous man everyone said he was. But she saw the truth beneath. She saw the boy from Sicily who'd lost his sister. The man who read Dante and remembered how she took her coffee. The person who'd been patient and kind and asked for nothing but a chance. Come back to me, she said. Leonardo's smile was sad and fierce all at once. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. The safe house was a small cottage on Staten Island, with bars on the windows and men with guns stationed outside. Marco left her with a phone, untraceable, he said, and instructions to call only one number if she needed anything. Gabriella sat on the bed in the small room they'd given her, and finally let herself fall apart. She cried for the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago. Invisible, safe, alone. She cried for the man she'd pulled into her life with one moment of reckless courage. And she cried for the future she'd been stupid enough to imagine, where somehow this could work, where love could survive in the spaces between violence. The phone rang at 2 a.m. Gabriella grabbed it, her heart in her throat. "Leonardo? It's me." His voice was rough, exhausted. "Are you safe?" "Yes. Are you?" A long pause. "For now." "What does that mean?" "It means this war is going to get worse before it gets better." He exhaled slowly. "The Vitalis want blood, and they're going to keep coming until they get it. So what do we do?" "We?" There was something broken in his laugh. "You do nothing. You stay hidden. You stay safe." "And you?" "I do what I've always done. I fight." Gabriella pressed her hand against her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. "I should have run that day, at the Trattoria. I should have been like everyone else. But you didn't. And now you might die because of it." "Gabriella," his voice gentled. "I was a dead man the moment I was born into this life. You didn't put me in danger. You gave me something to fight for besides power and territory and revenge." A pause. "You gave me hope." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't want to lose you." "You won't. I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep." "Then I'll make you this one instead. If I survive this, I'm walking away. From all of it. The family, the business, the blood. I'll find a way out, and I'll come for you. And we'll build something new. Something clean." "Leonardo." "I mean it." His voice was fierce now, determined. "You showed me there's more than this. More than violence and fear. And I want it, Gabriella. I want mornings with you. I want to hear you laugh. I want to grow old watching you finally believe you deserve every good thing this world has to offer." She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "But first," Leonardo continued quietly, "I have to end this, once and for all." "How?" "However I have to." The line went silent, but he didn't hang up. She could hear him breathing, could picture him wherever he was. Probably another safe house, probably surrounded by weapons and men planning for war. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I. Come back to me. Always." The call ended. Gabriella sat in the dark cottage on Staten Island with guards outside and bars on the windows, and she prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. She prayed for a Sicilian man with tattooed arms and deep brown eyes who'd learned to see her when the rest of the world looked away. She prayed he'd survive the war she'd helped start. And she prayed that somehow, against all odds, love could be enough to save them both. 5 days passed in suffocating silence. Gabriella watched the news obsessively. Every report of gunfire in Little Italy, every mention of organized crime activity, every snippet about police investigations made her heart stop. But Leonardo's name never appeared. Neither did confirmation he was alive. The phone he'd given her stayed silent. Marco checked on her twice daily, bringing food, answering no questions, his expression revealing nothing. The guards outside changed shifts like clockwork. The bars on the windows remained locked. She was safe. She was also going insane. On the 6th day, Gabriella made a decision. She couldn't just sit here, passive and helpless, while Leonardo fought a war she'd helped ignite. She'd grabbed that wine bottle because she couldn't stand by and watch. That hadn't changed. She wouldn't change. When Marco arrived with dinner that evening, she was ready. I need to see him, she said before he could speak. Marco's expression didn't shift. That's not possible, Miss Romano. I don't care if it's possible. I need to see Leonardo. I need to know he's alive. He's alive. Prove it. Marco studied her for a long moment, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or understanding. He wouldn't want you in danger, Marco said quietly. He doesn't get to decide that for me. Gabriella stood her ground. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, take me to him or I'll find my own way. You don't even know where he is. Then I'll start knocking on doors until someone tells me. She met his eyes. Your choice, Marco. Help me or try to stop me. Another long pause. Then Marco pulled out his phone. The conversation was brief, in Italian, too fast for Gabriella to follow. But she caught her name, and she caught the frustration in Marco's voice when he finally said, Si, capo. He disconnected and looked at her. Get your coat. They drove through Brooklyn as night fell over the city, the skyline glittering across the East River like scattered diamonds. Marco took side streets, doubled back twice, and generally drove like someone expecting to be followed. Finally, they pulled up outside a warehouse in Red Hook, industrial, anonymous, the kind of place nobody looked at twice. Marco led her inside through a side entrance, down a corridor that smelled of oil and metal, and into a large open space that had been converted into something between an office and a war room. Maps covered one wall, weapons lined another, and in the center, surrounded by a dozen men in dark suits, stood Leonardo Russo. He looked up when she entered, and the expression that crossed his face was equal parts relief and fury. What is she doing here? His voice cracked like a whip. Marco, I told you. She insisted, boss. Said she'd find her own way if I didn't bring her. Leonardo's jaw tightened. He said something sharp in Italian that made his men exchange glances, then gestured toward a door at the back. Everyone out, now. The men filed out silently, Marco included, until only Leonardo and Gabriella remained in the cavernous space. The silence stretched between them like a living thing. You shouldn't be here, Leonardo said finally. His voice was rough, exhausted. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and a fresh bruise colored his jaw. It's not safe. I don't care. Well, I do. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. Do you have any idea what the Vitales would do if they found you? What they'd do to you to get to me? Do you have any idea what it's been like sitting in that cottage, not knowing if you're alive or dead? Gabriella's voice rose. Not knowing if the next news report will be about your body found in the river? I couldn't. Her voice broke. I couldn't just sit there anymore. Leonardo's expression softened slightly. Gabriella. 6 days, Leonardo. 6 days of silence. 6 days of wondering if the last thing I said to you would be the last thing I ever said. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. So no, I don't care if it's safe. I needed to see you. I needed to know. He reached for her then, his hands cupping her face with that same gentleness that always surprised her. I'm sorry. I should have called. Should have found a way to... Are you winning? She interrupted. This war. Are you winning? Leonardo's laugh was bitter. There's no winning in war, only surviving. Then end it. She covered his hands with hers. Whatever it takes. End it and walk away like you said. It's not that simple. Why not? Because the Vitales won't stop until I'm dead, or they are. Because my own family sees mercy as weakness. Because... He stopped, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. Because the only way out is through. and the path is soaked in blood. Then I'll walk it with you. No. The word was firm. That's the one thing I won't allow. You don't get to decide that. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. Gabriella pulled back, her eyes fierce. I need you to trust me, to let me choose. You keep talking about walking away, about building something new, but you're still making all the decisions alone. Leonardo stared at her, something warring in his expression. I love you, Gabriella said, and the words tumbled out before she could stop them. I love you, Leonardo Russo. I love you even though it's terrifying and probably stupid and definitely dangerous. But I love you, and that means I get a say in what happens next. The warehouse fell absolutely silent. Leonardo's hands dropped from her face. He took a step back, and for a horrible moment, Gabriella thought she'd miscalculated, thought she'd pushed too hard, revealed too much. Then he smiled. Not the small, careful smiles she'd seen before, but something radiant and transformative that made him look years younger, like the boy from Palermo before violence had hardened him. Say it again, he whispered. I love you. Again. I love you, Leonardo. He closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was nothing like she'd imagined. Not soft or tentative or careful. It was fierce and desperate and filled with 6 days of fear and longing. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers gripped his shirt, and for one perfect moment, the war outside didn't matter. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Leonardo pressed his forehead to hers. I love you too, he said roughly. I've loved you since the moment you grabbed that wine bottle. Since you looked at me like I was worth saving. You are worth saving. Then help me believe it. He pulled back slightly, his deep brown eyes holding hers. Because I have a plan to end this. But it's risky, and it requires something I've never been good at. What? Trust. Not in my men, or my guns, or my reputation. His thumb brushed her cheek. Trust that there's another way. A better way. Help me find it, Gabriella. Help me be the man you see when you look at me. What's the plan? Leonardo turned toward the maps on the wall, pulling her with him. The Vitales want blood, so I'm going to give it to them, but not the way they expect. He explained it then. Not a war, but a negotiation. Not violence, but leverage. He'd been gathering evidence for weeks, proof of the Vitales' operations that would interest the FBI very much. Enough to put their leadership away for decades. I trade the evidence for peace, Leonardo said. They leave you alone. They leave me alone, and I walk away clean. They'll never agree to that. They will if the alternative is federal prison. He smiled grimly. The Vitales built their empire on intimidation. But men in cages can't intimidate anyone. And your family? What will they say when you walk away? Leonardo's expression darkened. I don't care anymore. I've given them 20 years. 20 years of blood and fear and nights I can't sleep because of the things I've done. He turned to face her fully. You asked me once what I need. I need to be done. I need to wake up without checking over my shoulder. I need to build something that doesn't cost lives. With me? If you'll have me. Gabriella's heart felt too large for her chest. What would we do? Where would we go? Anywhere. Everywhere. Leonardo's hands found hers. I have money, clean money, tucked away where no one can touch it. Enough to disappear, to start over. We could go back to Sicily, or stay here, or find somewhere neither of us has ever been. And do what? Whatever makes you happy. You wanted to be a teacher? We make it happen. You want to open a restaurant? Done. You want to sit on a beach and do absolutely nothing for a year? He smiled. I'm there. It was impossible. It was insane. It was everything she'd never let herself want because wanting meant hoping, and hope had always led to disappointment. But looking at Leonardo, this dangerous, damaged, unexpectedly tender man who'd learned to see her, Gabriella found herself hoping anyway. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, let's do it. Let's end this war and walk away and build something new. She squeezed his hands. Together. Leonardo pulled her close, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. I don't deserve you. Probably not. He laughed, a real, genuine sound that rumbled through his chest. But I'm keeping you anyway. Good. They stood together in the warehouse, surrounded by maps and weapons, and the remnants of a life Leonardo was preparing to leave behind. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos, sirens and car horns, and millions of people living their small, ordinary lives. And somewhere in Brooklyn, two people who'd found each other in violence decided to choose peace instead. The meeting with the Vitales happened 3 days later in neutral territory, a restaurant that had been closed for the evening, empty except for both families and their respective lawyers. Gabriella waited in the car with Marco, her hands clenched in her lap, while Leonardo went inside to negotiate the end of everything. He's good at this, Marco said quietly, seeing her anxiety. The boss, he's smart, strategic. He'll come out. And if he doesn't, Marco's hand moved to the weapon beneath his jacket. Then we go in. But they didn't have to. 45 minutes later, Leonardo emerged from the restaurant, his expression unreadable. He climbed into the car, and Marco pulled away from the curb. Well? Gabriella asked, her heart in her throat. Leonardo turned to look at her, and slowly, impossibly, he smiled. It's done. Done? The Vitales took the deal. The evidence stays buried in exchange for peace. No retaliation, no coming after you. It's over, Gabriella. It's actually over. She couldn't quite believe it. Just like that? Just like that. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. And I made one more stop before the meeting. Signed papers transferring my interests in the family businesses to my cousin. Legal, binding, witnessed. He met her eyes. I'm out. Really, truly out. Gabriella's vision blurred with tears. What happens now? Now? Leonardo took her hand, threading their fingers together. Now, we disappear for a while. Let things settle. Let the city forget about Leonardo Russo. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And then we figure out what comes next. Together. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? That I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. That something will go wrong. That... Leonardo silenced her with a kiss. Soft this time, tender, full of promise. No more fear, he murmured against her lips. No more looking over our shoulders. Just us. Just this. Just us, Gabriella repeated, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. 3 months later, the small villa in Sicily smelled of lemon trees and sea salt. Gabriella stood on the terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, a cup of espresso warming her hands, watching the sunrise paint the water in shades of gold and pink. Behind her, she heard the sliding door open and Leonardo's footsteps on the tile. You're up early, he said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Couldn't sleep. Too much beauty. She leaned back against him. I keep thinking I'll get used to waking up here, to waking up with you, but it still feels surreal. Good surreal or bad surreal? The best kind. They'd left New York the day after the meeting with the Vitalis, flew to Sicily with nothing but 2 suitcases and a promise to build something better. Leonardo had bought this villa with his clean money, a small place near Cefalù, far from Palermo and the ghosts of his past. Gabriella had enrolled in the local university, finally pursuing the teaching degree she'd abandoned years ago. Her Italian was improving daily, helped by Leonardo's patient tutoring and the neighbors who'd adopted her as one of their own. Leonardo had become someone new too. Not a mafia boss. Not a man defined by violence and fear. Just Leonardo, a man who read Dante on the terrace, who learned to cook his mother's recipes, who laughed more easily with every passing day. They were healing. Both of them. I got a letter yesterday, Gabriella said softly, from Stella's. Carmine wants to know if we're ever coming back. Do you want to? She considered it. Maybe someday, to visit, but not to stay. She turned in his arms to face him. This is home now. Your home. Leonardo's smile was everything. I love you, Gabriella Romano. I love you too, Leonardo Russo. He kissed her as the sun climbed higher, painting them both in golden light. And somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, calling the village to morning mass, marking another ordinary, beautiful day. Some people spend their whole lives trying to be seen. Gabriella Romano had learned to survive by being invisible until the moment 4 men walked into Stella's Trattoria with murder in their eyes, and she grabbed a wine bottle and chose courage over fear. She'd saved a life that day, but in the end, he'd saved hers too. Not by protecting her from danger, but by teaching her that love, real, honest, transformative love, was worth fighting for. Worth risking everything for. Worth building a new life for. In a small villa near Cefalù, surrounded by lemon trees and sea salt and endless blue sky, 2 people who'd found each other in violence chose peace instead. And they chose it every single day. Together. Have you ever taken a risk on love that changed everything? What gave you the courage to leap? Tell us in the comments. Thank you for watching this story until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and click on the next video. It is darker, deeper, and even more unforgettable. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story, and comment your country or city. Your support helps us create more contents like this.